Thanks for tuning into this year's Will Davidson's CLE. Our topic is cross-examining a witness through technology. And as you know, we're all aware, the past 6 months has seen a major shift to virtual hearings, including discoveries and motions and pretrials, and even in the criminal context, trials. And certainly one of the major challenges is trying to cross-examine a witness at a hearing, whether that's through Zoom or some other similar platform. My name is Jim Davidson, and with me today are Joel Cormier and Ron Davidson, who I note on the screen is Robinson, but that's no big deal there. And we are going to discuss the challenges and how to overcome the challenges of doing a virtual cross-examination. When we conclude with our discussion, we're going to follow that with a very short demonstration where we hope to incorporate some of these issues that we talked about into a cross-examination. So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Joel, who will get us started.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It seems that most of us have adopted Zoom for the purpose of conducting our virtual cross-examinations and examinations for discovery. So I'm going to focus my comments on some of the issues that we may encounter while doing cross-examinations over Zoom. And I would say that the key to a successful cross-examination or examination over Zoom is pretty much the same as the key to an in-person cross-examination. It's all about preparation. Obviously, the preparation is going to be somewhat different, but you want to test your system and test your setup prior to the cross-examination. Some of the really common problems that we see, well, there's a few, but video problems are quite common, and what we often see is video lagging or video freezing during a Zoom cross-examination. And, you know, with a few small steps, we can pretty much avoid that sort of problem altogether. One of the first things you'll want to do is to check your Wi-Fi connection. You know, and this can be simply a matter of moving closer to your router to make sure that you have sufficient signal strength and that you're connected to Wi-Fi. You know, if you're still having trouble and you can gain access to a cord, you can connect to the internet directly via a cord, and that will ensure that you have at least a connection to the internet. But you also need to worry about connection speed. These Zoom meetings, whether it's cross-examination or any other meeting, they consume quite a bit of bandwidth. And so you want to ensure that you have enough speed. That shouldn't be an issue for anybody with a high-speed internet connection working from home. But if you're working from home and somebody else is with you at home and you're sharing the same internet subscription and that other person is watching Netflix or is downloading files, then that can be an issue because those services consume a lot of bandwidth, and that could be one of the reasons that you're seeing some lagging in your video or your video is freezing. So you might want to make sure that nobody else is watching Netflix while you're in the middle of your Zoom cross-examination. And another very quick trick that you can do just to free up some bandwidth and make things run a little bit more smoother as far as video is concerned is to go into your video settings in Zoom and turn off high definition, because if you're running on high definition, that also consumes a lot of bandwidth. So with those steps, you should be able to avoid most of the issues that you encounter with lagging and your screen or the video freezing. Some of the other issues that people are having, I've noticed, are audio issues. And again, preparation is key. Before you begin your cross-examination, you'll want to go into your audio settings and test your speakers and test your microphone. And there is a button within your audio settings that allow you to do that. And you'll also want to make sure that you have chosen the microphone that you intend to use. If you're using the microphone on your computer, you can toggle between that and an external mic in the audio settings within Zoom. If you're using an external mic, you'll want to click on external mic within the audio settings. And also, if you're using an external mic or a headset, you want to make sure that that headset is connected to your computer as well, either with a cord or if you're using Bluetooth, you'll want to make sure that the Bluetooth connection is with the device that you're actually running Zoom on, not some other device. Another common problem that we often encounter on Zoom is echoing. And, you know, it's a rather disruptive way to start your cross-examination if we're hearing reverb or echoing. And that's usually because someone is connected both via phone and via their computer. And the simplest way to avoid that is simply to hang up the phone, for that person to hang up the phone. Alternatively, if you want to connect via phone, then you can go into your audio settings and simply click on Leave Computer Audio, and then you will be connected solely via phone, and you'll avoid that echoing. And you also want to make sure that none of the other participants within your Zoom cross-examination are in the same room as you, running on a different device, because that will also lead to the sort of echoing that we can hear sometimes. And one other thing I want to talk about where we see some issues sometimes is with screen sharing. It's very important that screen sharing functions well during a cross-examination, because you don't want your cross-examination to be disrupted by your inability to show a witness or opposing counsel documents. And again, testing the functioning of screen sharing is key, and you can simply do that before you begin your cross-examination by pressing the screen sharing button and ensuring that everybody else, including the witnesses, the reporter, and the counsel, are able to see what it is you intend to show them. Likewise, screen sharing also consumes a lot of bandwidth, so you want to make sure that you have a good connection using the tips that I've described earlier with respect to the video problems. And then finally, I think the best thing you can do to prepare for any glitches that might occur while sharing your screen and while showing witnesses documents is to send PDF copies of the documents to the witnesses, to opposing counsel, and to the court reporter in advance of your cross-examination. And you know, that way opposing counsel will have provided their witness with the documents. The witnesses will have the documents either in front of them or at least in an email on their screen. And the court reporter will have them as well, so that the court reporter can properly catalog the exhibits. And you know, using these quick and easy fixes, you should be able to avoid most of the common technical glitches that can occur during a Zoom cross-examination to ensure that your cross-examination runs smoothly. Thanks, Jim.
And that was great. And I think we're going to find that a common theme through all of these is preparation. All litigation is about preparation, and this is just one more aspect that you need to prepare for. The topic I wanted to spend a few minutes on is how to ensure the witness isn't being coached by somebody else in their room, or on their phone or through some other screen like an iPad. And it's a relevant concern, and it may be innocent, or it may not be so innocent. But the key, or one of the keys to deal with this, is through prevention. And again, that's really preparation. So early on, a day before, 2 days before, it's a good idea to contact opposing counsel, the witness's lawyer, and lay some ground rules, right? So, mention, how you see it unfolding, and that you have an expectation that the witness will be alone or will not be assisted by anyone, that the witness understands that they're not allowed to use notes or screens and that sort of thing. Get opposing counsel to agree. That's a main aspect to it, so you're both on the same page when it begins. And also ask opposing counsel to have that discussion with their client before the cross-examination begins. And it's fairly simple, and it sounds like common sense, but it goes a long way to preventing this sort of thing even happening at all. Another step you might want to take before you actually begin is ask everybody participating in the call. There may be a number of lawyers, court reporter, that sort of thing. Ask everybody to mute their screen before you begin. And that way, if you hear another voice, it has to be coming from the witness's room because everybody else is on mute, and you certainly know what's going on in your room. And that kind of prevents any suggestion, oh, it's not coming from my room. And if there are other lawyers on the line, they can make those observations as well as you can. Similarly, before you begin, just like you did with their lawyer, have a conversation with the witness. In discoveries, we always say, if you don't understand a question, let us know, that sort of thing. Do it with respect to this issue with coaching. Ask the person if they're alone. Get them to understand that the rules are, it's their evidence and their evidence only. They cannot be assisted. They can't be looking at notes. They can't be looking at screens. Get them to, ensure they understand that and get them to agree with you. It's obviously much harder to do something underhanded once you've had this discussion. And at that point, they can't say, oh, I didn't know. At that point, they're deliberately doing something underhanded. And I think that's just much harder. So a lot of this assumes that the witnesses are acting in good faith. Sometimes they're not. If they're not, that's obviously much harder. Before I go on to that issue, I should point out that not everybody has access to their own private. And I think many of us have seen this now in discoveries, smaller apartments, multi-generational families living in the same apartment. And it's just not practical or fair to expect them to have the house or the room to themselves. And so you may see someone walking behind them, and depending on the nature of the hearing, maybe that's not a big deal, maybe it is. The key, though, is that they have to understand that no one is to assist them, and they can't be looking at notes or screens. That's what you're really trying to prevent, not that they need alone, but that. So what happens, if you suspect something? Well, first of all, you should be vigilant. You should be looking for signs. It'll be kind of obvious if someone's reading from notes or a screen, right? They'll be looking down before they give an answer. It'll be a bit of a pattern. If you hear another voice like we talked about, certainly that's a red flag. Sometimes the witness may look one way, as if somebody is giving them information or they're communicating with someone in the room. If you see any of these red flags, ask the witness. Bring it up. Are you with someone? Are you referring to notes? Are you looking at a screen? If they deny it, but you're fairly certain something's going on here, put your concern on the record. This is really important. And not just your concern, but the basis for your concern. What it is that you're seeing, say that's what you're seeing. Say that you can hear another voice in the room and everybody else is on mute. Say that you keep looking down. You may find yourself one day at a motion, and this will give you some assistance in that regard. It's you may want to ask opposing counsel to assist you if you have a good relationship with them and you don't think they're complicit here. Get them to talk to their client, right? They'll probably go get a lot further with their own client than you will. Ultimately, if this is happening and you're really concerned about it, you can stop your cross-examination, right? All this is fairly new to us. And, if you think your client's case is going to be prejudiced by this and you can't seem to prevent it, then you can shut it down. I think that's probably a last resort move, but certainly it's something that you can do. Insist that you want to do this in person. You may get some resistance. You may find yourself before a judge or master, and that's why you want to lay that groundwork on the record during the virtual cross-examination. So I'm going to conclude there on that issue, and we'll turn it over to Ron Davidson.
All right, thank you very much, Jim. Well, I'm discussing 3 issues in relation to virtual hearings: making objections, difficulties with counsel, and difficulties with witnesses. In any hearing, it's crucial that you make an objection to a question before the witness starts to answer the question. With an in-person hearing, you're able to give notice to the court and to counsel and to the witness that you intend to object by rising to your feet in the case of a trial or a hearing, or holding the stop hand, gesture up to the witness in the case of a discovery. But, these are not available to you in a virtual hearing. As a result, you run the risk that the witness will start their answer just before or while you're objecting. And you want to avoid that. So here's how. Tell the witness before the examination begins to pause an extra long time after the question to give you a chance to object. The problem is that this request is usually followed by witnesses for a while, but as the hearing progresses, it is increasingly forgotten. In other words, you can't rely on that. Better still, make your objection before counsel finishes the question. Partway through the question, indicate that you believe you will be making an objection to the question, but you will allow counsel to complete the question before you object. And at the same time, ask the witness not to answer the question. To do this effectively, you have to be paying close attention to the questions and be ready to object. For example, plaintiff's counsel might be ready when there's questions about social media or the use of marijuana or recreational drugs. Defendant's counsel may be on their toes for questions about cell phone records or statements to police after an MVA, which could be compelled statements. So the key is to anticipate the question, indicate that you will be making an objection before the question is completed, and be ready to clearly and concisely articulate the reason for the objection. Now I'd like to highlight one particular difficulty with counsel that seems to arise much more in virtual hearings. In my experience, counsel will sometimes get away from a poker face during a virtual hearing. They seem to forget that even though they're not in the same room as the other participants, they are clearly visible to the witness and to everyone else. While a witness is testifying, counsel might use facial expressions, for example, rolling their eyes or making gestures like shaking their head. Counsel will do this when they are listening to questions and sometimes even when they are asking questions. The reason for the gestures is not always clear, and that becomes part of the problem. When faced with this, you need to decide. Should you just ignore it? How is it relevant? My advice is to exercise your discretion. The actions of counsel have the potential to influence a witness's testimony. You may want to politely draw it to your counsel's attention and ask if they would refrain from it. In response, counsel will sometimes, probably honestly, indicate that they didn't realize they were doing it. Some counsel will indicate, how is it relevant? I've been asked that in virtual hearings. How is it relevant? I've had witnesses advise me during or after virtual hearings that they found the actions of counsel extremely distracting, and they found it difficult to concentrate and focus while those actions were ongoing. In these situations, it does become relevant. It has the potential to affect a witness's ability to give their evidence. In some cases, it is arguably a communication between counsel and a witness. The key is this: stay professional, object to this type of conduct when it's appropriate to do so, and try to find some common ground with opposing counsel, namely a mutual interest in a hearing in which the evidence of witnesses is not influenced in any way. Finally, I want to highlight one issue that will arise much more in virtual hearings, and Jim has mentioned this in his presentation, and that's the use of notes by witnesses. While you're watching the witness testify, it may become obvious that they're glancing down, referring to notes. You're entitled to ask about the notes. The fact that the witness is relying on notes can relate to their ability as a witness to observe and recall events. It can relate to their memory and potentially their credibility. You are entitled to ask who the author of the note is, and if the witness used the note to refresh their memory before or during their testimony. If so, you may be entitled to a copy of the note or to a summary of what it says. Have the witness show the note on screen during the hearing. You may want them to take a photograph of the note with their cell phone, if it's important enough, and send it to their counsel. You can ask that the note be subject to an undertaking, or it can be made an exhibit or a lettered exhibit subject to a subsequent argument. You may want the witness to read those portions of the note that they relied on to refresh their memory. If counsel authored the note and it was sent to the witness, Opposing counsel may take the position that the note is subject to litigation privilege. It is still open to you to argue that the witness is using the note to refresh, support, or construct their memory. If the witness authored the note, it could lead to fruitful cross-examination in that hearing or perhaps in subsequent hearings. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Ron. Okay, as we mentioned, we're going to follow this all up with a very short demonstration. And, I think it's important to keep in mind always that just like in-person hearings, a discovery is different from a cross-examination on an affidavit, which is different from being in a trial. And the level of preparation obviously differs as well. So, keep that in mind when you're doing these virtual discoveries. The same rules apply in that regard. We've decided to go with our demonstration in the context of a discovery, mainly because that's most of us will be dealing with when we do these virtual hearings. And the purpose of the demonstration, of course, is to simply incorporate some of what we talked about. So I'm going to be the cross-examiner, Ron will be our witness, and Joel Cormier will be my opposing counsel. So we'll move to that now. Okay, we're back from a short break. Is everyone good to resume?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Can I ask everyone but the witness to please mute themselves at this point?
Sure.
Mr. Hamilton, during the break, did you have any communication with your lawyer or anyone else regarding your testimony?
No, I didn't.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to ask you some questions now about your health before this car accident.
Sure.
In the 3 years before this accident, had you been involved in any prior accidents or incidents where you injured yourself?
No.
All right. In the 3 years before this accident, did you have a family doctor?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And who was that?
Dr. Grewal.
All right. And how long had Dr. Grewal been your family doctor?
Since we moved to Coburg.
Okay. And when did you move to Coburg?
That was in 2004.
Sir, are you looking at any notes there today?
Well, not notes, no.
Okay, well, I can see that you're looking down and slightly to your right. It certainly appears that you're reviewing something before giving your answers today. Do you have something there?
Well, I have a brief chronology. It was just to keep my dates straight. Since the accident, my memory isn't very good.
Okay, well, that may be okay, but it's an important issue. Can we see what it is that you're looking at?
Do you want me to hold
for us? Yeah, please.
Hold it up to the.
Okay, and who prepared that for you?
Well, it's a handwritten note that I prepared last night.
Okay, did anybody help you with that?
No, I did it all myself.
Okay, well, that's fine. I don't really have a problem with that, but I would ask with the consent of your lawyer, if you could take a picture of that for us, please, at the end of today's hearing, and provide that to us by way of undertaking.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks, counsel. All right, returning to your health. In the 3 years before this accident, were you suffering from any adverse health conditions?
Just type 2 diabetes.
All right, more specifically, were you suffering from knee pain in the 3 years before the accident?
No.
All right. Did you ever seek medical attention for knee pain? Slightly different question. Ever seek medical attention for knee pain in the 3 years before the accident?
Well, I injured my knee years ago playing hockey, but it wasn't giving me any problems in the few years before the accident.
Okay, I'm going to share a document with you here. It's a record from your family doctor's records. And give me a moment here. All right, it's a handwritten note. I've highlighted it. Can you see that, Mr. Hamilton?
No, I can't. For some reason, it's not coming up on my screen.
Mr. Cormier, do you see that?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, I'm not sure why it's not coming up on Mr. Hamilton's screen. It is, though, one of the documents that I emailed you yesterday. Mr. Cormier. It's a PDF. It was entitled Document Number 1. Did you have a chance to forward that to Mr. Hamilton?
Yes, I did, Counsel. And Ron, this is one of the documents that I sent you yesterday. It's called Document Number 1. Do you have it handy?
Yes, I do. I have it right here.
Okay.
Okay. And okay, I'm just going to read the note. It's very short, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Again, it's dated June 2nd, 2015, handwritten note from Dr. Grewal. And it says, left knee pain increasing 6 months, wants MRI, prescription for physio. Is that accurate, Counsel?
Yes, I'd agree that's what it says.
All right. And you see that, Mr. Hamilton, now?
Yes, yes. I'm reading along with my counsel.
Okay. Do you remember seeing Dr. Grewal, your family doctor, in 2015 and telling him that your left knee pain was increasing?
Not specifically. I mean, my knee did flare up from time to time, but it wasn't a big deal like it is now. Now I have difficulty walking without a limp.
Well, do you recall asking for an MRI in 2015 for your knee?
I may have.
Well, do you deny the accuracy of these notes?
Well, I mean, if it's inner notes, I suppose it's probably accurate. I don't deny it.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that document. And I'm going to ask you, sir, are you on Facebook?
Yes, I am.
And do you post pictures of yourself from time to time?
Counsel, I'm going to interject here. It's difficult to object over video, and I don't know where you're going with this. So I want to make sure that this is a proper line of questioning before you go ahead. So go ahead and ask your question. And Ron, just wait before answering, please.
Okay, well, that's fair. I want to share a Facebook photo from Mr. Hamilton's Facebook page.
Well, was this in your affidavit of documents?
No, it's not in my affidavit of documents. I actually don't have a document. I was going to share it directly, from the internet.
Okay, well, go ahead and share the photo and I'll give you my position.
Okay. All right, Counsel, can you see that?
Yes.
Ron, can you see that?
No, I can't see it yet.
All right, let me try that one more time. All right, can you see it there, Mr. Hamilton?
Yes, now I can see it. Yes, yes.
Okay. And is this a photo of you, sir?
Yes, it is.
And is this a photo of you after having completed some type of organized running event?
Yes.
And this photo was taken in 2017 after this accident?
Hang on, I'm going to maintain my objection over that question. Ron, don't answer that question.
And the basis for your objection, Counsel?
Well, it's not in your affidavit of documents, Counsel. I mean, we're starting to play a bit fast and loose here. A document doesn't have to be a piece of paper. I mean, it can be an electronic image. And I'm only going to allow documents that have been disclosed in your affidavit of documents to be put to my witness.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I mean, this is a photo on Mr. Hamilton's Facebook page.
Counsel, I'm maintaining my objection.
Okay, well, I accept that. Let's move on. Maybe this is a good time for another break. Okay, so we'll stop our short demonstration there. Like all of these demonstrations, it's a little contrived to get the issues in, but I hope we were able to show that how these issues come up and how you deal with them. There was, of course, the preparation beforehand, getting the documents that you're going to rely on to the other counsel to give to their witness. Sometimes that might show where you're going with your cross-examination. So that's always a bit of a tricky one. We dealt with the issue of looking at notes, mild issue in this case, and how to object online. So like everything in litigation, and as we've talked about already, most of this does come down to preparation. Look for potential pitfalls in your cross-examination from a technological point of view, and try and deal with those before you even start. And it'll go a long way to a successful cross. So we'll conclude there, and thanks very much for tuning in.